And welcome back to another episode of TWiP Weddings. Once again, my name is Bruce Clark, and I am joined this week by Mr. Robert Evans. Good day, sir.
Good day.
No Brian this week. He's on assignment. Actually, I blew it. I didn't send the invite out to him, and he's in another meeting. But that's on me. So it's just you and me hanging out.
We were secretly excluding him today.
Yeah, secretly excluding. Yes. So this week we thought it would be good to chat about destination weddings, which you have plenty of experience with. I have a little bit of experience with, but we thought it would be a good topic to cover for our audience. And I think, most photographers probably dream of photographing a destination wedding in an exotic location, but there's a lot more to consider than just wondering how much sunscreen to pack. So this week we're going to offer up our advice for photographing destination weddings. But before we do that and get into the show, we want to remind you how you can participate in the show. We've got several ways to interact with us. First, you can visit the website at thisweekinphoto.com/weddings. And there you'll find the show notes for each episode. And in those, we will put links to everything we talk about, including our pics and all that good stuff. You can also leave your comments and feedback for us in the comments section. If you have a question or a suggestion for a topic that we could cover in a future episode, you can email us. Our email address is twipwed@thisweekinphoto.com. Or if you prefer using social media, just add the hashtag TWiPWed to your post, and we will keep an eye out for those. And if you want to follow us, probably the best place is join our Facebook group.
Which is just jumping.
It's jumping. We got people in there all the time, questions being asked. And, I know Brian is in there, and Robert, you've been in there answering questions, and I've been in there answering questions. And we get some great suggestions from our audience. Like the other day, somebody wanted to sign up not through iTunes. So I had to gave me a good idea to set up a FeedBurner account so you can subscribe using whatever podcast subscriber you use. So be sure to join us on our Facebook group, facebook.com/groups/TWiPWed. So let's jump into the show. What do you say?
Let's go, eh?
Let's go, eh? Thank you for supporting Canada. Yeah. So this week, like I say, we wanted to talk about destination weddings. And I think, photographing destination weddings kind of conjures up images of, photographing a beautiful couple on a white sandy beach at sunset, followed by a few days of sipping Mai Tais while relaxing next to the pool. But I think you and I both know the reality is that destination weddings they're a lot of hard work, and they require considerable planning and resources to pull it off. So today we're going to share our thoughts on photographing destination weddings. We're going to talk about pricing them, packing, shooting, and most importantly, probably getting home, safely with the images safely intact.
Correct.
So you are probably the expert amongst us in terms of destination weddings. So tell me, how often do you typically travel, and what do you consider a destination wedding? First off,
I think that's a good. In today's world, because of the internet, people get married in a lot of places, and you get people coming into your town, so it's a destination for them, but not for you. You might go over a state, and you might live in New York, but you drive to New Jersey. Is that really a destination wedding? There's those issues. I don't think it really matters. I think, like you explained it, most people think a destination wedding is a sandy beach but it's basically getting to go someplace fun and different and exotic than you're normally used to, I guess, in your little local town. The length of travel, I think, doesn't matter. But I can go back to my first destination wedding and put myself in the place of those people who aspire to do one. Sorry, I'm a little ill, so.
No worries. And you're starting to break up again. So, yeah, it's siloning again.
Okay. We'll just pause for a second. Let me come in and come out.
Okay.
Hear me? Yep.
Yep.
Okay, so I'll just start with. So I can take myself back to my first destination wedding, and remember, you know, how flattering it was that, wow, somebody wanted to take me. Mine was in Hawaii. And somebody was willing to, I'm like, you're going to fly me to Hawaii to shoot your wedding? Wow, that's really awesome.
Nice. Where were you living at the time?
I was in Los Angeles.
Yeah.
And so, you know, that's still a 5-6 hour trip. I think I had been to Hawaii myself, but it was like a friend of a group of friends that I knew. And the guy's like, look, I'll pay for your travel. And, you know, and they booked just a, you know, normal package at the time at the studio. It was actually, I was working for another studio. It was the last studio that I worked at before I started my business. So this was prior to 1994, probably 93, I would guess, somewhere in that range. And you have to remember that was pre-internet. Those of you not old enough to know what that is.
What is that? What's that, Grandpa?
And it's like, instead of putting BC on things, we put what, PI, pre-internet. So the destinations that I did prior to the internet, more or less, and even after, was a lot of time was people that lived in Southern California that were getting married someplace else. It was very rare that I'd have somebody in New York, you know, somehow hear about me and say, oh, I want you to come to New York and do a wedding. So anyway, going back to that mindset, it is very flattering and it's fun, and you can look at it as a free vacation, and the excitement of getting to shoot in a brand new location that's beautiful and tropical or wherever it is. And that's great, especially in the beginning. If you're single, you're not married, you're not attached, you don't have kids, you know, you are free to just jump and go do those things. And of course, to get experience, you know, you're probably most willing to do that at a lower rate, or the client just paying your travel, or a little bit of your fee, whatever it is. I encourage you, by all means, go do it. Now, speaking from the guy that travels 7 to 10 times a year, not all for necessarily destination, but a lot of it is, because now I shoot a lot in New York and California, and I mean, I've been all over. I've Europe, Italy, France, Guatemala, Costa Rica, even Canada, eh?
Oh, and all the way up here, eh?
Montreal. I mean, and a lot of it is, of course, within the continental United States. I mentioned my first wedding was in Hawaii, our first destination, and I've probably done 10 since then. But after a while of traveling, you'll find that, of course, I still get excited about going someplace and shooting someplace new. As a matter of fact, I'm leaving in 10 days.
You're breaking up again. Yep.
Damn it. All right. I'll just start with as a matter of fact.
Mic.
I don't know if it's the mic. I mean, I don't know what else. Can you still hear me?
I can still hear, but it's really silent.
Okay. I just messed with the thing. I'm just going to sign out. Okay.
Yep.
Okay. As a matter of fact, I leave in a week for a wedding in Cancun, which I was down there twice last year. So I'm familiar with, you know, with coming in and out and those things. There's just certain things, of course, that you start to learn. But I mean, let's start off with, after a while, you do enough of them, you start to realize, like, okay, well, it's fun to, you know, go on the vacation and do that. But even me going to Cancun, for instance, it's 4 days of my time.
Yeah.
It's not 1 day, which is the first thing to remember. You know, even if you fly down on Friday, shoot a wedding on Saturday, and fly home on Sunday, that's 3 days of your time. And it's no fun. No. So you have to start charging for that.
Yeah.
Now, the way I do it, you can charge for multiple days, and my destination rate is 10,000 a day with a 2-day minimum. So even if I did it that quickly, I usually will take that weekend and make it 4, which is I'm doing this way. So I'll fly down on Thursday. I'll be there Friday. I shoot the rehearsal dinner Friday night, wedding Saturday, sometimes brunch Sunday, and leave later on Monday, so that I have a little bit of time to myself in that if I fly down on Friday, I don't actually like to fly on the day if I have to shoot the rehearsal dinner. If I'm, they really want that, then I'd fly down Thursday, and then I'd have part of Thursday. I'd have all day Friday to kind of do what I want. I work Friday night. I work all day Saturday. I work Sunday morning, and then I have Sunday afternoon and Monday morning off to sort of do what I want. But even on a travel day like Monday, even if I leave later, it's not a relaxing day. Like you get to, you have to think like, oh, well, I have a 6 o'clock flight, but you're going to have to be out of your room at 12 or 1 at the latest. So then you got to pack up, put your stuff, and you're sort of like, in that transition period. So you can't just totally react. So those are just some of the things that you have to think about. Now, going back to how I charge for it, if I say I charge them 10,000 a day, 2-day minimum, but I will tell them I will photograph everything for you over your weekend up to 3 days. So sometimes there's even like maybe on Thursday night, there's a welcome dinner, Friday night's rehearsal dinner, Saturday wedding, Sunday brunch. I don't nickel and dime them for any of that stuff. I've shot golf. I've shot girls in the spa. I've shot, all that stuff. Now, I've done, bigger weddings, bigger clients where I've been in a location for 10 days and I've charged for 8.
Yeah.
And, that type of client understands. And I have other guys, of course. I have more than, it's not just myself. It's my, I've had as many as 5 or 6 people on some of these weddings because of what we have to cover. But you have to charge accordingly for that. You have to think about all the things that you're not thinking about, that you make sure that you need to charge for when you charge. And I say that's my rate, but plus expenses. So they have to pay all my airfare. They have to pay my hotel, transportation to and from the airport. I charge a per diem a lot of the times because, per diem is not just food, which a lot of people think it is, but you're like tipping and taxis and, even like within the scope of the job. If you have pets, let's say you got to kennel your dog or, all those things, like people don't, you've got to charge for all that stuff. And again, maybe not on your first one, but I guarantee you that comes out of your pocket and you're like, wow, that was like kind of expensive. That wedding cost me money.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I'm talking about. You get a real good gist and I gave you something to think about. But destination weddings aren't as glamorous as they may seem if you do them sort of regularly.
Yeah, particularly if you're going to, like, in your case, you said, you've been to Cancun, multiple times in the last little while, right? So it might be special the first time, maybe the second time. By the third or fourth time, it starts to become less special and more of now it's just I'm going back to the same place that I've shot a bunch of times. So it's no longer maybe special for you. It's still special for the couple, still unique for them, still a destination for them, but maybe not as much for you. So I think, a lot of people also, think, oh, it's, or at least on the client side, they sort of think, oh, well, you're getting a nice paid vacation to come down, but it's not really a vacation. You're not choosing the destination. You're not choosing the time when you're going to go. Chances are, unless like if we go, it would be me and my wife. So I would at least have somebody there with me that, yes, we could make a little holiday of it. But if you're going down just by yourself, it's not a holiday for you. You're going down with maybe people you don't know. It's their family. So it's not really a vacation per se. Yes, maybe you get a couple of days to lay next to the pool or dip your toes in the water for a little bit. But really, it's a lot of work because there's a lot of work leading up to it. But I think the key thing that you touched on when you charge the day rate is I think it's that opportunity cost as well, right? So you have to consider, yes, you might only be there for the wedding 1, maybe 2 days if you're doing like a trash to dress session or a day after, or like you do the rehearsal dinners. But it's that opportunity cost of when you're not home doing, working on your own business, right? You're traveling, you're in
Right. Or ask
airports.
yourself this question: if you could book 2 weddings on a June weekend in your local town, and let's say you charge, okay, let's say I charge, I don't sure, but my local rates are a little less expensive, but let's say I'm gonna make, $8,000 one day and on Saturday and $8,000 on Sunday. Okay, so that's $16,000. That's still less than the 20, but I didn't have to go anywhere and exert my time, and I was home with my family, and all of those things. So again, ask yourself the question, like, if you're just charging for one day and you charge $5,000, and you tell the client, but you turn down work at home, you agree to do this wedding, but it's a busy weekend and you could charge $5,000 on Saturday and $5,000 on Sunday and possibly even something on Friday. Well, you just screwed yourself out of 10 grand if there were, it's a weekend. So you have to think about what money could you make if you were not traveling. You just have to ask yourself those questions and do what's right for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And it depends on where you're living too. Like, I think, if you're in the States or different areas, you could probably do those little charters, right? You could go in for a day, shoot the wedding, and come back. Whereas up here in Canada, a lot of them, particularly destinations that people go to, they're often these 1 week package things, right? So you kind of can only go for a week. You can't really go for less to some destinations. They're starting to get some more opportunities, but again, it depends where you live. Like here, where I live in Edmonton, there's less, it's not bad, but there's some less choices. So some destinations, your only option is to go for a full week because that's all they run in terms of flights.
Right. So, and let's say you have to consider your weather. Let's say you lived in New York, and 2 weekends ago when they got all that snow and all 3 airports were closed, and you planned on flying to Cancun on Friday, shoot the wedding Saturday, and come back on Sunday, somebody would have been hosed.
Yeah. So how do you plan for that? That's a good question. How do you, like you said, you like to get there, if possible, you like to arrive at least the day before you're supposed to start shooting. Now that's obviously just to kind of get in, get refreshed and relaxed, because it can be tired, it can take a lot out of you to travel.
Yeah. I think I do that for 2 reasons. One, selfishly, of course, for my own reasons. So I get a little bit of time by the pool and maybe walk around, take pictures, enjoy the environment that I'm in. But yeah, like if I have to shoot on Friday, I definitely do not like traveling. If I'm doing rehearsal Friday night, I don't want to travel on the day that I'm actually supposed to shoot, because delays, even if it's 2 hours, can really, then it just adds that extra stress. So I want to get in there the day before, and then I don't have to do anything until Friday night. So great, I can sit around the pool, I can walk around, take photos, I can do whatever, but I know that I'm there. And it does allow a little bit of hedge time should your flights be delayed for whatever reason. Now, if you live in one of those areas where you get a lot of snow, especially in the winter, and anytime it's possible, I would even suggest flying out a day or 2 early and, making a little vacation. And you just have to sell it to the client that way. Like, look, you really want me to come to Cancun to do your wedding, and I live in Winnipeg.
Yep.
That gets a lot of, or Winterpeg, as I know you guys call it.
Yes.
And that you get a lot of snow there, and that's very possible. But the wedding Saturday, like, I'd think about leaving on Thursday, even if I didn't have anything to cover Friday night. So even if you make it in one day, you have, all of Friday to yourself, and you shoot the wedding on Saturday, and then, Sunday maybe you have off and you go home Monday, or you have to get back, whatever your thing is. But definitely traveling down there, you need to allow time. I did I did when I shot Shania Twain's wedding. It was on New Year's Day. I forget how many years ago that was now, but it was right around the last time New York had a huge storm and all 3 airports were closed. And this was, a week after that. And we almost, to make a very long story short, missed it, because I had to fly from LA to New York to Puerto Rico. And okay, so but New York was the caveat. There was no, you'd think from LA you'd fly to Florida and then down to Puerto Rico, but no, that's not how they do it. So we almost missed one of our flights, although flying through cities that do get snow too. If you're flying through New York, Chicago,
yeah,
places like that where it's definitely possible.
Yeah, and it's not just weather that can happen too. Obviously, weather is a big factor, but then you can also have, mechanical breakdowns can happen.
Correct.
There's other things that can interfere with travel. So we even when we're doing, quote unquote, a destination wedding, we shoot weddings here in the mountains. It's a very popular, destination for a lot of people. They'll go to Banff or they'll go to Jasper and have their wedding there. Well, that's for us. That's about a 4 to 5 hour drive from where we live in Edmonton. And so again, we usually, the way we position it to our clients is we'll typically want to get there the day before, to avoid any possible issues, because you don't want to have, particularly if it's in the winter, the roads, the highways can be unpredictable. We always tell them, like, would you rather have us there the day before and know that we're there, and it only costs you a little bit more, and then plus some expenses as far as hotel and that, rather than taking the risk that if something happens on the way, to us on the way down, or there's bad weather or traffic or roads get closed or what have you, then we're not there. At least if we're there the day before, we're there. Or if there is a delay, then we've got some wiggle room that, maybe we get there the next day, the day of, but at least we're there, right? So that's how we always kind of position to our clients.
And that's how you have to sell it. You almost like you tell your client, like, look, you're paying for an extra day for me, but it's like buying insurance. I mean, we're all paying insurance on our houses and our cars because something might happen. So if you put it in that terms, like, hey, you're just, it's going to cost you an extra $500 to bring me down a day early, but that's your insurance that I am there and that you're going to have amazing photos. Because what are you going to do if I get delayed and you're scrambling, Yeah.
And plus it's a long day already, right? If we're going down to shoot 8 to 12 hours of a wedding, to tack 4 or 5 hours of highway driving onto that, and then to just show up and be, kind of be on, that's pretty tough, right?
Right.
So even
and for some of that's a good point. Like for some of the weddings that I do, I charge travel days as well. So part of my expenses, because if I'm flying 8 hours or so to get to a location, that's a whole entire day of my life. And so some of you might ask what travel days are. Well, travel days are very common in the corporate world. People charge for their time to fly. It's usually I think the standard going rate is about half your day rate. So if you were to charge, and I've done this several times before, even if I'm charging $10,000 a day, it's $5,000 there, $5,000 back, and the clients pay it. Now, granted, it's the right client that'll pay that. Right. And and again, let me back up too. You hear what I charge. And I'm flexible sometimes on those rates, depending on when the wedding is, how far out the wedding is, how far I have to travel, all of those things. If I get a last minute destination wedding and, the client's like, well, or the client's like, they get it. They're like, oh, we didn't realize it was going to be 20 grand. We figured it was going to be 15. Okay, well, let's talk. Like, I don't want to lose the job over 5 grand, especially if it were a last minute thing.
Right.
So again, I think the bottom line is that you just have to decide what's best for you. I think one thing, like I've actually considered doing this in my business, is like hotels do, is seasonal rates. We're all usually kind of sit around in the winter. It's slower, even if you don't have weather or not, generally in most locations. But it just slows down, basically December through March. You could charge less of a fee at those times or offer a 20% discount for booking on those dates. You have to do what works for your business.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, for sure. Like, obviously it's a much different story if they're trying to book something like that in the middle of summer when it's your peak, it's your busiest season, right? So you may not be as flexible. But if it's, middle of winter and you don't have anything on the calendar, yeah, you can maybe afford to be a little bit flexible, right? But you do have to consider, that opportunity cost of what if what could I be doing here at home? What other business opportunities, what other work could I be generating at home, instead of being in an airport or on a plane that day for that client? So that's an important part when you're kind of figuring out how you're going to price a destination wedding. Right.
And you're right. I mean, time, like you just mentioned, I get a call, I'm getting married in June of 2018, or let's say 17, because that's more, but I only have a $10,000 budget. I'm like, well, my rate is $10,000 a day with a 2-day minimum, because I know I have more than a year or so to book that. Now, if they call me today and said, hey, I'm getting married in June and I still have the date open, I only have a $10,000 budget, then I'm open, then I'm going to negotiate. I'm still going to want them to pay travel or any of those things. But, I'm going to open the conversation like, all right, well, this is what my normal rate is, but I'm willing to work with you. Let's see if we can meet in the middle.
Yeah. So, a question for you on the travel aspect of it. So, you obviously get them to include the travel and the airfare and the hotel. Is that something typically that they will book, or do you prefer to book that yourself and they just reimburse you? Like, do you just stay at the same
Yeah,
hotel where they're staying, or how does
that's
all
a
that
great,
work?
because
How's
I
that
actually thought
conversation go?
about that tip earlier. Here's the biggest tip I can give you about destination wedding. First of all, is insist as much as you can, other than laying on the ground, kicking and screaming and throwing a tantrum, that you stay at the resort where the wedding or the event will take place. Because
Yeah.
I've done both, and I've been put at stuff close by because, oh, well, the room's here, $600 a night. We're not going to pay that for you. But by the time you take taxis, and it adds like a whole extra, like you got an hour, you got to like leave your hotel to get over there, to be there on time, to, just insist on it. Say,
Yeah.
this is how we do it. Even if you've never done a destination wedding, lie and say, well, this is how we do it. With the destination weddings we've done in the past, they're not going to check your credentials. Just say, I insist that I'm at the hotel because it's the most convenient. I'm there, your access, whatever.
Yeah.
That's number one. What else you asked?
Do you have them book it, or do you book it
Oh,
yourself
yes.
and then they just reimburse you?
And again, I've done both. In my world today, I choose to book the airfare myself.
Yeah.
One reason, because I'm a Delta frequent flyer. I get the credit for spending the money with Delta, and I get, they don't buy some super cheap ticket where I have to go to 10 cities before I get there, and it's 15 hours of me flying.
Right. Yeah.
Yes, the client may say, look, I only, I'm not going to let you fly first class. I'm not going to let you, do
Yeah,
those
you got to be
things.
reasonable with it, but
Right, you have to be reasonable, but I control my destination, my destiny, so to speak, by booking the airfare. Now, I don't mind sometimes if they pay for the hotel, or because if it's at the resort, they have room blocks. They sort of set it up for you. You just say, I'm arriving this date and I want to leave on this date.
yeah.
The most optimal, and I've run into this so many times, like you can either charge a per diem, or you could allow the client to just allow you to charge food or whatever you're going to do to your room, and that they pay it, which means you're on what's called master account, meaning that you can charge anything to your room. When you check into that hotel, you do not put your credit card down. You put there's just one there for you. Now, even with as much as I've done, I've had that happen about 4 or 5 times. Generally, you check in, you put your own credit card down for incidentals, but I'm billing for per diem, so then I have to bill the client back. You just, again, don't take advantage. Don't get a massage because the client you're on open account with the client. Do something reasonable. Now, I've been at nice resorts before, and the day after, it's one thing I like to do is go get a massage. I just took my own credit card to the spa and I paid for the massage myself, so it didn't show up on the client's bill. I absolutely know that if I would have left it on the client's bill, they would have paid it, but I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
I don't want to raise that flag. So, but I've noticed many times when you go to leave and it's supposed to be on account, that it's not. So you need to really verify all that stuff when you check in. If that's what you've worked out with the client, or they'll tell you, here's another thing. They've used their credit card to reserve the room, to hold the room. But then when you go to check out, all the room fees and everything are going on your card because the client hadn't, come by and given their actual credit card to make sure that your room fees go on that card. So when you check in, even if the incidentals go on your credit card, you give a credit card for your incidentals, and you make sure that the room fees and all the taxes are going to the client. And ask that in the beginning, because when you're checking out and headed to the airport, if there's a problem, it's too late. You're going to have to deal with the client afterwards. It's all going to get charged to your card. You're not going to get paid for over 30 days from the client generally. So it's one of those things to know going into it.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's switch gears a little. I want to talk about just packing gear, what you take with you. But before that, there's another important piece I think that a lot of people probably may overlook or don't think about, and that's just visas and permits and things to be able to go and shoot in different countries. What have you encountered in terms of some of the common places that you've gone and photographed? Have you ever run into any problems with getting visas or work permits? Any of that kind of stuff.
Okay, so knock on wood. I'm knocking on my wooden desk yet. I've
Okay.
never had a problem. I've never had a problem, but you do need to do your research before you go into certain countries, especially Canada.
We're tough up here, eh?
Oh my gosh, getting over the border in Canada back and forth is like Fort Knox. And you just have to check into that and see if you do need those work visas. And I've never actually acquired one. I heard Mexico's another place, but generally they just sort of let you in and out as long as you don't have too much crap. You know, try to look like you're not going to photograph wedding as much as possible. You don't have to take your whole studio with you. You know, travel light. But you do need to research that, because there are some places where you just, you know, they'll turn you away if they know you're there. And here's why. It's because you're making money in their country and they're not getting taxes on it. For, you know, so there it is. Yep. It comes down to the mighty dollar. I generally, let's use the word fib, when I go through customs. So, you know, I'm there to attend a friend's wedding, even if they see all my equipment and they're like, well, why do you have all this camera equipment? Well, I'm a photographer. I love photography. I'm on vacation. I'm gonna come down here to take pictures.
Yeah.
They don't, you know, they don't have to know any more than that.
The NSA is listening in. You're just now on a no-fly list.
So, you know, that's the case. You're like, I'm allowed to have cameras. You do. That's another thing you need to check into. In some countries, you're only allowed, like, if you look when you're flying in and out, and it's a little late once you're on the plane, but you're only allowed like 2 bodies.
Yep. Cuba, it's only 1. Cuba, you're only allowed 1.
4 lenses. I don't know. I'm not Canadian, so I don't get to go to Cuba.
Oh, you will soon. You will soon.
I know. There's a lot of people. It's one of my it's one of my spots I'd love to go to. And so you do have to check that, because they will stop you, as well as even coming back into the United States. I've 2 different times. One coming back from Italy once, and one coming back from, I don't know, they were both, I was in Europe. And the United States, you know, I have all this equipment, and you're supposed to file this customs form before you leave saying, here's everything I'm taking with me, and here's everything I'm bringing back. And they check it, because basically they're thinking too that you bought the equipment abroad and you're trying to avoid paying taxes coming back into the United States. Now, both times that happened, again, I played dumb, and I didn't know the first time actually that I had to have that form. The second time I just played dumb again, and I got away with it. But, you know, it's something that you might want to consider if you're going to take a lot of equipment. I've had traveling into Mexico, really deep Mexico. I think I was like 2 hours from, I think it's not Nicaragua, whatever is the borders, what's below Mexico. Anyway, we don't have to do geography today.
No geography. No, it's too early in the morning.
But this is TWiP WED, not TWiP geography.
Yes, yeah.
But I brought it was for a celebrity wedding, and I brought an iMac, you know, and I had a Pelican case for it and the whole bit. Well, they only allow 1 computer, but only a laptop. So they stopped me in this little tiny, you know, 1 customs agent in this little tiny town wherever we were coming in the airport. And long story, I had to end up paying like $300 as like a fee to like get the computer in. Right. Which ultimately I passed on to the client, but it caused an hour at the airport, and it's a pain.
No rubber gloves involved, I hope.
No rubber gloves. I didn't have to bend over, drop the soap, any of that.
Okay, good, excellent. So another question then, in terms of like licenses and permits and visas and those kinds of things, what about at the actual resorts? Because I've heard stories, and it's never happened to me personally, but I've heard stories of photographers showing up to photograph a destination wedding, and then the actual resort won't allow them onto the property because they have a resort photographer and they don't permit any outside photographers to come in. And so they find out you're a photographer. Sorry, you can't come on the property. Have you heard of that, or have you encountered that?
I guess similar. I've never heard of the resort not allowing it. I mean, but again, that's something you do ahead of time. You make sure that you tell your
static.
Oh, still?
Talk again? I think it went away.
You make sure when you arrive at the hotel. I'm good?
Yep.
Okay. I'll start over for the sound editor. So that's something that you need to discuss with the bride and groom ahead of time. And you say to them, okay, so they know that you're bringing in your own photographer. I mean, going to this job I'm going to in a week, Cancun, I've Skyped with the planner at the hotel this week, or the girl who's planning the wedding. So they know, obviously that I'm doing it. I'm actually working with a local videographer that I worked with, ironically, last April when I was down in Cancun. So, they're like, oh, Ben's excited to work with you. And, so it's funny. It's like working in my own town.
Yeah.
But you just want to make sure that ahead of time so you do not run into that. Because if you get down there, of course, as the photographer, and the resort says to you, oh, sorry, you can't work here, you can't shoot here because we only hire local and you don't have a permit or whatever, or that's what they could pull on you, like, okay, well, where's your permit to work in our country?
Yeah.
To be doing this job here, and then you don't have anything. And so if you discuss that ahead of time with the bride and groom, and they're like, yep, they know you're coming, but you didn't look into it, or you didn't get your permit, and they call you on it, then the bride and groom's going to stare at you. It's not going to be their fault. But if the bride and groom don't tell them that they're bringing a photographer and you show up, well, then it's their fault. But ultimately, it's just not a great situation. So you want to avoid that as much as possible.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that would be the worst case scenario, right? So do your research ahead of time, know where you're going, learn what the rules are in that country that you're going to. Like I mentioned, Cuba, they only allow one camera. So I know a friend of mine, she shot down in Cuba a few times. And what she does is she usually she's shooting by herself. She doesn't go down with a second shooter. So typically what she's done in the past is given her second body to somebody that's in the wedding party, father of the bride or somebody else, right. And they take her second body in for her. So then both are, then she's got her two cameras and everything that she needs. So sometimes you just have to get a little creative in terms of
right.
what you're packing, where you're
bringing. So if you're going wherever it is, and the bride and groom, oh yeah, here's the people we're dealing with at the hotel or wherever the wedding's going to be. Ask for that person's contact number, email them, call them, Skype with them. Say, hey, I'm coming down. Are there any rules, regulations, things I need to know, work permits, all of that stuff. And ask the hotel, because so then you've also covered your ground, because if you got there and somebody else tells you something, you can go back and like, oh, well, no. This person told me I was good to go. I asked this question. I have emails to support that. Now, that may not help you at an airport, but I mean, if you're at the hotel and you run into that, and this sounds all scary, but like I really haven't run into much of this. But it's best to do your homework. Visa is a whole different thing. You're not even going to get into a country if you don't have a visa. So if you ever go to a country such as Australia, for instance, that requires a visa to go, then you need to do all that or you won't be traveling. Here's another thing. The United States or countries don't allow you to travel with your passport if it's about to expire within 6 months. So even if you have a passport and your passport's, going to expire soon or even under a year, I just make it a regular practice. Go renew your passport. Don't put off getting your passport if you don't have one. As soon as you know you need to do this wedding, go through the process. You go to your local post office, you get an application, you turn it in. It takes 2 to 3 months. You can rush them, but it's quite a lot more expensive, and no need to do that unless you get a last-minute destination wedding, for instance, and then you pass those rush fees along to your client.
Yep. Yeah. I know in Canada here they just recently changed it. Now we can get a passport. It's good for 10 years now, which is nice. They used to be 5 years, so that's kind of good. But yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's a good point. Check that out.
The U.S. is 10. I think mine expires in 2019.
How about vaccinations? I thought about that as another thing. Have you places you've traveled? Have you gotten vaccinations and things?
I've never had to take the needle in the backside yet for
not yet. Okay.
Exotic locations that I've been to, but it's a great point. I know Africa, a lot of there's definitely vaccinations there. It's a good thing to research. Like, we have Google. Hey, I'm going to blah blah blah. Do I need to get shots? Is there any special? Another one is just considering your own safety. You're traveling to a foreign country with expensive camera equipment. I've heard Jamaica even popular place for destination weddings, but I've heard many stories of people sort of getting mugged there, and basically everybody has their own experiences. But I've heard like you go to Jamaica, you just stay in your resort.
Yeah, that's what I've heard too. Yep. For sure. Yeah, we went to India a few years ago and shot a destination wedding in India, and we went and got a lot of vaccinations and things. We probably went a little overboard in terms of what what we needed, but we thought we'd rather be safe than sorry, right? So in terms of packing and what you take with you, is it a lot?
God.
Robert's dying. Have you come from a country lately with?
No, my whole family's had this like crazy cough, and I avoided it, and of course I got it now.
Now you got it.
No other symptoms other than the cough.
Just a cough.
No.
It's okay. Our editor can cut that stuff out.
I have a mute button, but
no, we'll work through it. So how about packing gear? So we talked about licenses and how we charge for our weddings and stuff. What about gear? Does when you go to a destination wedding, does it change the gear that you bring with you, or do you bring pretty much the same kit that you would on a local wedding when you're doing a destination wedding?
I tend to pack lighter, of course, because you're carrying equipment through a airport, so the more weight you have, the more cumbersome it is. Overhead space, luggage fees, those things. So you want to kind of consider. I generally, depending on where I go, I don't take strobes with me other than like off-camera flash.
Yeah.
Where I might have that at home. Sorry. But yeah, I tend to like, smaller bodies, fewer lenses, just take the necessities and the things that I need. Of course, lots of backup, like as far as batteries, battery chargers, things that you don't want to like fly down there. Oh, I forgot all my battery chargers, and now you're really screwed.
And on that, also remember plugs too, so that if you're going to another place where they have a different plug or a different power requirements.
Yeah, I have like converters that like I plug into the wall that convert, 220 to 110.
Yep.
So that you don't blow up your camera equipment when you plug it into the wall.
Yeah, that would not be good. Because I would imagine trying to find replacement gear or rent gear or find a camera store or something like that when you're in a foreign country is probably not going to be that easy. They don't necessarily have B&H down the street or Amazon that you can one day drop ship something to yourself if you're in the middle of Jamaica or something. So
yeah, so you want to make sure you're covered. Like camera batteries, if let's say you shoot Canon and you have 2 batteries that go in your vertical grip, and that usually gets you through one wedding, and that's all you have, I might consider buying 2 more.
Yep, that was good to have a spare.
With you, fully charged, so that, should you not be able to plug your batteries in or whatever, you're good to go.
Yeah. Now, do you bring all your gear or as much of your gear as you can on board in the carry-on, or is there anything you ever check?
My computers and my cameras are always on the plane with me. You're allowed 2 overhead in the United States. So I make sure that I have camera bags that works with. So I have a computer bag and a camera bag. Sometimes my camera bag, I have a Tamarack camera bag that the computer does fit in, and I try to get it all in one bag just so that I don't have 2. And then if I do bring lights for whatever reason, those will go under the plane in a protective case. But my clothes, lights, that stuff would go under the plane, but cameras and computer go on the plane with me.
Yeah, I think we pretty much do the same. Is we'll take as much as we can on the plane, cameras, lenses, and then the for sure the camera bodies, memory cards, all that stuff goes with us on the plane. And then anything, lights and stuff like that it would suck if that stuff got lost or didn't make it to the other end, but we could still, if we had our cameras and our lenses, we could still do our job. Maybe not as well as if we had our lighting with us, and so depending on the situation and the circumstance. But again, try to carry as much as we can with us, on the plane, and not check it. And
Which then brings up an important point in returning home. I know you probably were going to ask this, but of course, before you've left the hotel, you've backed hopefully your wedding up, at least downloaded it. I put it on 2 separate drives just so that I have it. I always bring 2 drives with me to the destination. Yep. And then, of course, I don't erase the cards. So I keep, that all that stuff's with me, of course, in my computer and or my camera bag, but I keep the cards on my body.
Yeah, that's
so
good.
worst comes to worst, something happened. That's also a good practice. Like when leaving a wedding, no matter where you are, if somebody were to like try to take your equipment, take your cards out of your camera, keep them on your body, you know, in the case. And if someone came and robbed you, for instance, and took all your camera equipment, at least you have the cards. That hopefully your equipment's insured.
Yeah, that's a good tip. Yeah, we when we did that India one, when we shot in India, we went and brought two drives with us, and we were going to do some traveling afterwards. So we weren't coming home right after the wedding. We were spending about 3 weeks in India and Nepal traveling. So what we did is we kept obviously the cards and the one copy with us, and then the other drive we actually gave to our couple. Now it was encrypted. It was like password encrypted, so they couldn't do anything
into it.
Right. But so then they had it in their luggage and they carried it with them and then just gave it back to us when we got back home to Canada. So that way we knew that if anything happened to any of our stuff, they would also have a copy of the images too. So
right. And even within the hotel, you know, wherever you're staying, you're in a foreign country, you have to remember that. Now I'm pretty trusting and I leave my gear out. I try not to spread it all out the room to advertise.
Yeah, you're like, here's all my stuff.
But it's in the bags and it's in my room. But you know, after you shoot the wedding, you download the wedding and you stay a day or two or a week or whatever it is, I put those drives in the safe.
Yep.
You know, and lock that stuff up so that again, you know, the equipment's there and if they see it, they're not going to bother to go into your safe too, generally.
Yep. Excellent. So what about just tips for shooting in, you know, I guess, again, a lot of destination weddings. I mean, it's not necessarily the case, but a lot of when people think destination wedding, it's usually you're shooting in more of a tropical climate. I think what a lot of people imagine of a destination wedding. Any tips for shooting in a tropical or really, really warm or really humid environment?
Yeah, I mean, just dealing strictly with the humidity part of it, you know, if you keep your stuff in your air-conditioned hotel room and you come out into an 85, 90 degree, you know, 80% humidity, your lenses will immediately fog up.
Yep. Experience that in Cancun in August.
Yep. So don't freak out. You have to let them sort of acclimate. You can use a lens cloth and clean them, but they'll still kind of look fogged up. You just have to give them a certain amount of time to sort of acclimate to the humidity, and then they will clear up. So that's one thing to know.
Yeah, one thing we did was because we were shooting kind of in the room and outside of the room, like we were shooting the dress outside the room and different things. So what we did was we left one camera out on our balcony where we were shooting, and then had our other camera inside. So that way when we went outside to shoot like the dress and some details, or our room had a huge wraparound balcony, so the girls actually went outside. So we would just then go pick up that camera that was outside and then leave it outside, and then but we were, you know, obviously wouldn't want to just leave it outside your hotel room door or something like that. You know,
but that brings up a good point. Let's say you're shooting, getting ready, you're in the bride's room, and then you go outside and come back in, you go outside, you know, your camera's gonna be like, wait a minute, you know. So you know, you definitely have to consider that. Another one I think is give yourself plenty of time to scout. Another advantage and another sort of thing you can tell the couple is like, you know, hey, I need to get there a little bit of extra time to sort of scout. I want to see the lighting, what it looks like at 4 o'clock the day before, you know, which is the ceremony time or whatever your start time is or whatever. So I have a good idea of what lighting is going to look like. Now, I always see it as an advantage to, of course, shoot at some place that I haven't worked at before. You know, it's like a whole new canvas to paint on. But I want to walk around and see, you know, the lighting and what it's going to look like that time of day when I'm going to be shooting. Walk the hotel extensively. You know, there's little nooks and crannies and things in hotels that you can find that are exciting that you may not know if you just sort of don't go beyond the obvious and look within the, you know, 300 feet around the ceremony and where you're going to be. You might find some really unique locations. You mentioned doing, you know, a shoot the day afterwards, a trash the dress, or just, you know, some sort of fun shoot. Like, yeah, maybe on the wedding day you can't do that, but if you walk around and scout, you find something that's really amazing, but you think, oh my gosh, there's no way the bride's really going to do this. Maybe you talk her into doing it the next day, or, you know, it's how you sell it, and you get excited. You're like, oh my gosh, I found this location. It's 500 yards down the beach from your resort, like in between our resort and the next resort, but like, oh my gosh, I want to shoot here. And, would you guys be up to do that, maybe after the ceremony or the next day or, whatever it is. So that's, I think, super important to, know your surroundings, become familiar with them, find, you're down there to shoot someplace different, then find something different, find something that's going to excite you.
Yeah. Does your timelines differ a lot when you're shooting destination weddings? Is that something you talk to your couples about? Because obviously, ideally you want to probably get them at that sunset time if they're wanting those beautiful beach photos, right? And not at 1 o'clock in the afternoon if you're down in Cancun in August, right?
And I still try to discuss it. I still, we've talked about it here. I like to run on a 3-hour timeline prior to ceremony, getting my couples to see each other. As a matter of fact, the one that I'm going down to do this weekend, when I had that conference call with the planner a couple days ago on Skype, she's like, Robert, what time do you want ceremony to end? She's giving me the option. And I said, well, what time is sunset? She said it's at 6:45. So, and it's about an hour and a half ceremony. And I was like, wow. I'm like, okay. I said, well, ideally, I'd like to end at 6:30. It'll be beautiful for them. I still have a little bit of light. It's like that kind of nice time of day. I'll try to get my couples, especially on a location like that, if they're willing to do it. Like I say, when you kiss and say I do, like go for a walk, like just keep going down the aisle and down the beach, and I'll follow you with a long lens and, almost like a second first look, and take some candids and just sort of enjoy the moment. We'll stop when you're ready and maybe take 5-10 minutes of pictures. But ideally, I've done all my stuff ahead of time and I don't have to do anything else. And this is sort of bonus time for me. So I'm timing it that way. Even if I have to do a couple family groups that didn't happen prior to, I still have enough light. Because even as once the sun sets, we can probably still shoot for half an hour.
Yeah.
Before that happens. So, yeah, I try to run on the same timelines. In here I was like given the opportunity. The planner's like, oh, whatever you want. And so I talked with her 2 days ago. My client lives locally, so I'm meeting with them tonight at 5:30. We're going to go have dinner, and I'm going to go over all the same things that I just went over with the planner, that I've already done with the makeup artist. The makeup artist called me, asked me what she wanted as far as her timeline. I told her this is how I want to do it: 3 hours, first look, blah, 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 blah. And so, everyone's going to be on the same page, and you're going to just, you got to, that's another great point, is you're going to this beautiful place. Create a situation so that you have, if you don't have the best light, you can't always do that, but try to work it around that. But give yourself time to shoot. Again, I say, do you shoot what you want or do you shoot what you get? And most photographers shoot what they get because they don't take the time to create a situation for themselves so that they have time to actually create beautiful images that excite them instead of just covering a wedding and getting the basics.
Yeah, I've heard another photographer, a friend of mine, said, give me a half an hour of awesome light. I'd take that over 2 hours in really crappy light. Right. So, kind of apply that to your destination.
Sometimes we don't have, the ability to control, the bride and groom pick 1 o'clock in the middle of the day and high sun because it's the only, whatever, we don't know.
Yeah.
But, ideally, and again, if you want to sort of control some of those things, when the client's coming to you and booking you hopefully a long time before the wedding, start talking about those things. Like, well, what time sunset that day? Have you guys looked into that? We should do the ceremony later or earlier or whatever it is. You're hiring me as the expert to take pictures. Well, I'm the light expert. So this is, when we should be doing photos at this time. And, so if you can make that happen for yourself, you're going to be a lot happier because you're going to get better images. The worst thing I think is you go 3,000 miles to a beautiful location and the client doesn't utilize your talents.
Yeah.
Because they did it their way and you didn't. You could sit back and go, well, I could have done so much more if I had more time or, whatever. And that's why I like to do it before. So I have an hour and not 15 minutes. And, you've got to work it into your favor.
Yeah.
Carpe diem, seize the moment.
Seize the moment. Absolutely. Awesome. Well, I think we've covered the topic fairly well. Again, we could probably go into more detail in terms of how you go about shooting in a destination location, but maybe we'll save that for another day. And let's move on because we do have a listener question this week that's actually related to destination weddings. And so let's ask that. So this week we've got a question. It's from Roy in our Facebook group. And Roy he's shooting his first wedding as a primary shooter at the end of the month in Colombia. Has anyone ever been there or shot there that can give me advice about Colombia and or traveling tips? So I think we've given some traveling tips for Roy. So hopefully, that'll apply no matter where you're going. But specifically Colombia, have you shot in Colombia before?
No, Guatemala I think is the closest that I've got to Colombia. But I think so. Going back to some of the tips that we gave before, contact the wedding planner, talk to your bride and groom. Find out, any rules or regulations. Are you in a safe neighborhood and not safe neighborhood?
Yep.
All those things. It's one thing that's just stressful going to a foreign country that you've never been to, and now you're sort of adding like, oh, I'm going to a foreign country and I'm responsible for capturing someone's wedding images. So you have to be, I think, a lot more vigilant and active, and just answer the questions, everything that you want to know. Don't just show up and go, oh, I didn't know that.
Mm. Yeah, sometimes you don't know what you don't know until you don't know it, but hopefully you get that from experience. So hopefully we gave some good advice in the first part of the show that will help Roy.
I think it would just be redundant to answer that. I mean, I did answer it, but it's a lot of what we just talked about in this show. So
yeah, so hopefully that helps Roy. Follow up with us, Roy. Tell us how it goes after you've shot the wedding in Colombia. Let us know. Leave a message on our Facebook group and let us know how it went.
And another quick point too would be, so he's doing a wedding in Colombia. I'm going to go ahead and assume the clients are Colombian. How about digging into any unique traditions that Colombians do at weddings that
good point.
That we don't do here in the United States, if Roy is in fact from the United States, but wherever you are from. Again, asking the bride, asking the planner that you might contact at the hotel, just knowing, to expect, oh, I didn't know that they were going to do, this. The same thing, I just had that conference call with the Cancun planner. I'm shooting a rehearsal dinner, which is like a boat cruise to an island. They're going to do a fire show with fire dancers and an LED show. I was like, well, that sounds kind of cool. I've never shot LEDs before, but I've shot enough fireworks and those things that I know to expect that. And then on the night of the wedding, there's also fireworks. So we kind of get the whole gamut. But that's stuff that I want to know about. And yes, I guess I would eventually found out about it.
Siloning again.
Still?
Yeah. It got worse that time.
Let's see if it goes. Does it go away?
No, it's still there.
All right, I'll just come out.
Yeah.
And I'll just start over with that part.
Okay.
And back.
And back.
Okay. So just like the call that I had with my planner for my Cancun wedding, I talked to her and she told me at the rehearsal dinner there's a boat cruise to an island. And then once we get there, of course, there's dinner, there's fire dancers. So I'm like, okay, that's cool. And then there's an LED show. I don't think I've ever shot an LED light show at a wedding. I think it's the new, cheaper version of fireworks.
Okay.
But the next night at the wedding, there is fireworks. So it's just sort of, even those are not traditions, and I know that's kind of why I went off that, it's sort of getting that information and knowing what I'm up against. But, going back to the tradition part, there might be something at a Colombian wedding, especially during the ceremony, that happens and you don't shoot it. And that was the most important part of the ceremony. So you get that information, of course, from the bride. Shame on her for not telling you, but shame on you for not asking.
Yeah, just like you would do, I think, at any wedding, right? You try to find out as much as you can about what's going to happen and the details. But you're right, when you're going to another country, they may have there might be cultural things that you have to be aware of as well. I mean, being a foreigner in a foreign country, sometimes you can get away with certain things, but you want to try to not make any cultural faux pas. So do your research ahead of time before you go to a country. If there's certain ways you greet people, or there's certain customs or certain traditions, you want to make sure that you're being respectful of that as well. And particularly if you've never shot one of those types of weddings before, you want to make sure that you're not causing any cultural
and we touched on
issues.
this, but make sure you don't need a visa to get into that country. Like, your passport will get you there, those type of things. Know what the how much, like you mentioned, only one camera in Cuba, so maybe Colombia only allows that. Like, know what equipment you can take in and out. You can find all that, of course, on the internet by going to those countries, immigration sites.
Yep. Or check, most countries usually have a consulate or a consul general office that you can talk to. So you can call those offices too and say, here's where I'm going, this is what I'm doing, what can you tell me? And they're good about helping out as well. So that's what they're there for. Excellent. Well, hopefully that helps Roy with his destination wedding. Again, we want to hear from you and answer your questions. So just head on over to thisweekinphoto.com. You can leave your questions and comments on the blog post for this episode, or you can also submit your questions by emailing us at twipwed@thisweekinphoto.com. All right, before we wrap it up, we've got our last segment, which is our picks of the week. And each episode, we'll share a photography-related item that we think would benefit wedding photographers. Our picks can be anything as long as they're somehow related to photography or the business of photography. And Robert, what have you got for us? What's your pick this week? I think I might know.
Well, no, we were geeking out before the show because, of course, the show doesn't go live, and so by the time you guys listen to this, it'll be old news. But Sony just announced the new A6000 and a couple new lenses. But I'm going to stick with my original pick of the week, but I got to give my Sony shout out. Since I missed the last episode, you guys talked about off-camera flash and flash.
Yes.
I was not feeling well. I saw something that I do not have yet, so I want you to know that, but it intrigued me because they're making it for Sony, but of course it's made for Canon and Nikon and already available. And I know there's many on the market, but this is Photex. It's the Odin 2 TTL flash triggers. And so there's a trigger that goes on your camera and a trigger that goes onto the flash, and you can control up to 32 flashes, should you be so crazy.
Whoa.
Right at the touch of your button, there's like a little screen, and you see flash A, flash B, flash C, and you can raise them up a stop, lower them stop. So right there at your camera. Ideally, it's probably on a tripod at this point, but you can just go to the first flash. Oh, I need to turn that up, turn that down. So you basically can have like studio flashes, but with off-camera flashes. So looks pretty interesting. Price point is, let's see, I'm on the website. Wasn't that bad, like this stuff can get expensive. And I saw, if I go to B&H, this is for, these are for Nikon. The transmitter is $210 and the receiver is $160. So it's not bad. The same thing for the Canon.
But $4,000 Canadian.
Yeah, but 4,000 Canadian, so sorry, Canada. Sorry, Canada. But yeah, so that looks kind of exciting, and I just sort of wanted to, I guess, tail in and contribute to the last episode. And those of you that didn't listen to it, you can go back and hear Bruce and Brian talk about off-camera flash.
Excellent. So that's the Photex Odin 2 flash triggers. Again, we'll put links to that. Well, my pick this week is something I haven't personally used, but I do know I learned about it from David Duchemin, and it's a service called MedJet Assist. Have you ever heard of this?
I have not.
So MedJet Assist is basically it's travel insurance, but it's more than just travel insurance. What it will do is if you find yourself in a situation where you need medical care, they will actually basically air vac you out of wherever you happen to be in the world back to your home country for like hospital care. So this happened actually to David Duchemin several years ago. He was leading a photography tour in, I believe it was in Italy. And he was there a few days before his students were going to arrive, and he was out doing some location scouting, and he lost sense of where he was standing, and he was focused more on getting a really cool angle, and leaned over this bridge and ended up falling off this bridge. I think he fell about 20 feet, landed on his feet 20 feet down, basically just shattered both his legs, like just destroyed his legs. They were surprised that he lived. And so he spent a couple of days in hospital in Italy to get stabilized. And then as soon as he was stable enough to fly, he had this MedJet Assist insurance, which wasn't very expensive. I think I looked at a basic one, is about $400 a year. And for that, they basically flew him out on a private medical aircraft with, I think on board was a doctor and a nurse, and flew him all the way back from Italy back to Canada, so that he could then get on Canadian soil as a Canadian citizen, and then he was able to get care here in Canada. So for about $400, it was probably about $100,000 flight. So you had to do that yourself and get medevaced from a country.
Right.
So it's called MedJet Assist, and it's medjetassist.com, and you can go on there and you can enroll. And they have different programs depending on how much you travel. If you're doing a lot of travel, like Robert, you might sign up at one level. If you just need to do just a short-term thing, like they have an 8-day term for an individual, is $99.
So if I were going to a country,
say Colombia, say like Roy going to Colombia,
right? And I'm just like, well, I know I'm going to be in Colombia for these 10 days, so I just basically insure myself for those 10 days.
Yep. And then if something happens to you and you find yourself in a situation where you need to, a surgery or an operation or what have you, they'll actually just assist you out of there. So they'll fly you out on a medical flight.
Hey, for $99, that sounds worth it.
Yeah. So definitely something to look into. Again, I haven't personally had need to use this, but knock on wood. But David Duchemin had been signing up for this for years and years and years and years, and never had to use it, and then had this major accident while he was in Italy, and so thankfully he had this and was able to get him out of the country and on Canadian soil. So something to check out. So if you are shooting a lot of destination weddings, take a look at that. But at the very minimum, make sure, of course, that you do have personal travel insurance on your gear as well. Those are things we didn't really talk about too much, but I think definitely those are things you want to also make sure that you have is insurance.
Yep.
Don't want to travel without that, because you never know when something could happen. Excellent. Well, hopefully that was a beneficial episode for our listeners that are either shooting destination weddings or contemplating shooting destination weddings. But again, if you've got questions for us, email us, get on our Facebook group, send us your feedback. We'd love to hear from you. And that brings us to the end of another episode. So, Robert, where can people go if they want to catch up with your latest happenings?
Well, if you want to see my work, of course, you can always go to my website, which is robertevans.com. I'm on Instagram and Twitter, which those are both at Robert Evans. And my Facebook page is Robert Evans Studios. And of course, don't forget our Facebook group. You want to ask a question, go on Facebook. It's TWiP Wed. And we are happy to help as much as we can.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're looking for me, as always, you can visit my website. It's momentsindigital.com. If you're looking for me on Twitter or Instagram, that's where I'm hanging out mostly, or Facebook, just at Bruce Clark on those social networks. And of course, be sure to visit the website at thisweekinphoto.com for our show and all the other great shows that are on the thisweekinphoto.com, This Week in Photo Network. And thanks again for listening to TWiP Weddings, raising the bar one wedding at a time.
We limped through that.